And welcome. So thank you for coming to our meeting. Those that have heard about it through Eventbrite, the Meetup group, Galapagos Travel, CNH Tours, through our Facebook, Instagram. This webinar is about Easter Island, the small island with the big legacy. And I would probably add to that the great mysteries. Just to go over some of the logistics here. So the meeting, it is being recorded. So we will be sharing that with all participants that have been registered. So you can send out that recording to your friends and family or refer back to it at a later time. My name is Kathy and I will be hosting the meeting here. So I'm just going to kind of be monitoring the chat. So if you got questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end of the meeting. So we're going to have a talk. So Josie is going to talk for about 30 minutes about Easter Island, and then Mark will fill in with a bit of the tour details for the Easter Island trip in 2026. And then the remainder of the time will be for questions and answers. So that's how that will go. So I will just sort of forward here on my slides. Can you all see the screen?
Yep.
A thumbs up?
No, we don't. Nope, no, we don't. I don't.
Not yet.
I see it.
I got it.
Oh,
I have it.
I just see the gallery.
Tony Russomano. Oh my
Okay,
goodness.
Oh, my cover is blown.
I know.
All right, we'll do this afterwards with a question and answer period. So we're still waiting for that screen share, Kathy.
okay, let's try this.
It was working a few minutes ago.
Yeah. Do you see it now? Is that a negative? No?
I see it. I see it on top. It says Galapagos and CNH Tours.
Okay.
And a special welcome to members of the Bucket List Nature Travel meeting.
That's funny.
Okay. Okay, do you see that, Mark? Everyone else sort of see this over here?
I see it.
Green and gray?
Yep.
I see it.
Okay.
Okay,
Great.
I see it. Yeah, I see it. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, we'll just make sure everyone can see what we're going to be talking about today. So that was sort of our introduction slide there. So covered who's going to be there. So just a little bit of background. Some of you are very familiar with CNH Tours, but just so you're familiar, this is the team that supports CNH Tours. So CNH Tours stands for the Cultural Natural Heritage Tours. It was Mark and Heather that started this company back in 1999. And then also another company, Galapagos Travel, also started around the same time with the focus of the Galapagos was their original specialties. So both were branching out into other iconic destinations, and now they're under one ownership management group. So under the Heather and Mark are now the owners of the two companies. And Galapagos Travel, it was because the other Mark there was retiring. So taking on sort of that same feeling. So the two companies had the same sort of focus, guided by a focus on the highly personalized service destination for which we have lots of expertise and intimate knowledge of our team. So we have the team here you see in the pictures, our destination experts living in many of these wonderful destinations that CNH Tours and Galapagos Travel provide trips to. So it's really a fantastic place. So these are just some of the locations that CNH Tours and Galapagos Travel can take you to. So of course, today we're focused on Easter Island. So without further ado, I will just introduce our wonderful speaker today. And we are so delighted to have Josie Nahoe here with us. And Josie is going to be the guide for our tour in 2026. She has been awarded the top guide of the year in the national award in Chile. She has roots, deep roots that are from Easter Island. So her mother American, her father from Easter Island, raised and educated in the US, moved to Easter Island 25 years ago. And some interesting facts that her grandfather, William Moai, led most of the restoration of the islands in the Moai. So it's just an absolute delight that Josie is here to talk to us about some of the wonderful places on Easter Island, and also that she will be our tour leader for that trip. So without further ado, we're delighted to have her, and I will pass off my screen to you, Josie, if you're ready.
Okay, I'm ready. And I guess I will apologize ahead of time for any technical difficulties I may have. We're a little bit kind of backwards here on Easter Island, but let's go from here. Okay, so let me share my screen. Oh, sharing is not turned on. Okay, I don't know if
I'll
Yes,
make you a
I'm
co-host. That's me. Give me a second here.
Mhm.
There you go. You should have that option for you now.
Okay, screens, documents. This is the screen I want. Okay, so of course, this is not what we were working with the last time, was much easier.
There we go.
Okay, are you guys seeing stuff?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, let me see if I can get this. Okay, all right. So we're good. So, thank you very much for joining us today. I'm always delighted to talk about my little island and kind of get people interested, because it is really an amazing place. Rapa Nui is not only the story of some amazing art and culture, but really the foundation of human resilience that is just probably the most amazing part of it. Yeah. So I will get started here. This is a really beautiful drone shot of our island. Tiny little island. It's a volcanic island that was created as the result of 3 primary eruptions, the first of which took place about 3 million years ago. The last volcanic activity took place about 5,000 to 7,000 years ago. So the plate that we're on, the Nazca plate, is actually moved over the hotspots. So the hotspots are still very active, but not underneath us. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So primary eruptions created kind of a triangle-shaped island with primary volcanoes at each vertice, and then the island itself is covered with these low-level volcanoes that just look like rolling hills all over the island. The island is very small. It's about 163 square kilometers, and the high point of the island is the top of this primary volcano here, Maunga Terevaka, and it's about 510 meters. So not very high and not very big, yeah. So I want to take advantage of, again, of this beautiful drone shot we have to talk a little bit about the township of the island. So where you can see this little kind of populated area, this is the modern township of Hangaroa. And it is the only modern township on the island. So when you leave Hangaroa, you're essentially an archaeological park, yeah. The last census that was done on the island was done in 2022, and it told us that we have approximately 8,600 permanent residents on the island. That was the first time when this census was done that we found that the indigenous Polynesian community actually made up less than 50% of the total. And this has occurred really more than anything else because of the development of tourism. As tourism has increased, we've needed to build more hotels, more restaurants, and we need people to support this. So a lot of people have come in from the Chilean mainland in order to help support this tourism. And of course, this migration of people from the outside has affected our culture, has affected the use of our native language and our cultural traditions. But I suppose things change, yeah. Another thing that we can see from this drone shot, if I can zoom in here a little bit where the little pointer is part of our runway, okay? So this, of course, connects us with the outside world. The US Air Force was here from 1965 to 1970, and they actually constructed the first runway here. So the first airstrip was finished up in 1966, and the island began to be serviced by the commercial airlines LAN Chile in 1967. So that was the first commercial airlines to the island. In the early 90s, NASA actually financed the extension of our runway, and it began to actually run the whole width of the island here, some 4,400 meters. And this was extended to allow for emergency landing of the space shuttle, which is kind of a cool thing. never happened, yeah, but it does allow for some fairly large aircrafts to come in. We can actually receive jumbo jets here on this little tiny island. But for our purposes, the Dreamliners that Latam will bring you here on are probably sufficient, very comfortable planes, yeah. So what I also will take advantage of with this drone shot is to talk a little bit about this volcano here. This is a beautiful volcano crater that actually has a crater lake in it. It's called Rano Kau. And Rano Kau is one of 3 volcano craters that had lakes in them. When the first Europeans arrived to the island in 1722, the Dutch, and they named the island Easter Island because they arrived here on Easter Sunday, they observed an island that had absolutely no vegetation, no high trees. They said there wasn't a tree over 10 feet high anywhere on the island, yeah. So for a very long time, they thought, well, this is interesting. They've got all these big statues everywhere, but how did they move them around? How did they construct them without any trees? So in the 1950s, within the crater of Rano Kau, they actually began to do core sampling of the sediment, underneath the lake in order to investigate and study the pollen that had had settled in these crater lakes. And the pollen studies really kind of created a whole new vision for what the prehistoric flora of the island was made up of. We realized that this very barren island at one time was had a lot of vegetation, highly vegetated, and had a lot of palm trees that created a completely different ecosystem. Yeah, so what we see as far as vegetation on the island today is very different from what it originally was when the first Polynesians arrived to the island. Yeah. Okay, so we'll get off of this picture and move on. Hello. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about where the Rapa Nui people came from. As early as the 1980s, they were doing DNA testing on the human remains here in Rapa Nui, and it did show that the remains here have the Polynesian motif. So we're Polynesians. There was a little bit of discussion about whether or not we were from South America or Polynesia, and that was mostly done by the archaeologist, zoologist, explorer Thor Heyerdahl. Yeah, because we are very close to the South American mainland, and he really believed that it would be just as easy for South American Indians to get to Easter Island as it would be for Polynesians, maybe easier. But we do have Polynesian DNA. Our language, our native language, is very similar to other Polynesian languages. And it turns out that the ancestors of the people who eventually made it to Rapa Nui actually started out around 5000 BC in Taipei, Taiwan. And they were Pacific Islanders that slowly made their way across the Pacific. They brought with them their language, their cultural traditions. And in the case of this group, they brought with them pottery. And this is something that today is referred to as Lapita pottery because it was originally found in Lapita, New Caledonia. They found this pottery in New Caledonia and they were able to trace it back to Taipei and also trace it forward all the way to Samoa. And we know that the most eastern islands of Polynesia were settled from Samoa. So these Pacific Islanders, they got to Samoa about 2000 BC, we think. They hung out for a while, and then about year 0, they started to move out. And they went out in various directions. They went north towards Hawaii. They were going kind of just straight east to the Society Islands, the Marquesas, eventually Rapa Nui, and then finally Aotearoa, New Zealand. I figure those Polynesians didn't want to go to where it was too cold, but finally they had to go there. So this is all what they refer to today as the Polynesian Triangle. And it's very interesting, this connection that we have with the indigenous people of Taiwan. And there are actually some collaborations being done between people from Aotearoa and Taiwan as far as studies of their language, of their, they're comparing DNA and all of that. And it turns out that we're very closely related now. So we'll move on from here. This is some examples of Lapita pottery. And again, the Lapita pottery was found as far east as Samoa. And then it seems that they were there for so long that things started to change. So we don't see it any further east than Samoa. And then, of course, we have the settlement theories about Easter Island, Rapa Nui. And we've got a pretty big range. There are a handful of things that the academics, the archaeologists are still debating and they can't agree upon. One of them is when the people got here. And another is how many people eventually lived on this island, but we'll talk about that later. The first group to come to Easter Island and actually be able to do carbon-14 dating was the Norwegian archaeological expedition that was here in the 1950s. It's interesting that it was called the Norwegian Archaeological Expedition because 3 of the main archaeologists were Americans, to include my grandfather. But at any rate, it was financed by King Olav, so we can call it the Norwegian Expedition. They did carbon-14 dating on the island, and the dates that they published as first settlement dates of Rapa Nui ranged between 300 to 700 AD. So, you know, as compared to the rest of the world, fairly late, but as far as Eastern Polynesia is concerned, pretty early. They did make notes in their reports that it's quite possible that the carbon that they used for dating was actually carbon that had resulted from natural fires, and that not necessarily human, you know, folks were making fires to cook and stuff. It's possible. So anyway, that was put out there. And then we've got, like within the last 20 years or so, folks that are saying, no. They came much later. You know, the carbon-14 dating that's been done in the past is just not very accurate because they were using old techniques, and we really don't think that they got here until about 1200 AD. Most of the people that have done any kind of work in Easter Island don't think that everything that this group of ancient Polynesians accomplished on this island could have been done in such a short period of time. That's the biggest argument that they have. So right now, most folks are saying, well, why don't we go middle ground? Probably they arrived around 900 or 1000. But anyway, so that's one of the things that people are arguing about today. And now we'll talk about kind of the history of Easter Island. And when I say history, I mean from the time that Europeans arrived to the island and started writing stuff down about us, yeah? So the first European expedition to be recorded on Easter Island, or who wrote things about Easter Island, were the Dutch. And they arrived here on Easter Sunday, 1722. They named the island Easter Island. I always wonder how long it took for the actual Easter Island people to find out that the rest of the world were calling them Easter Islanders when they were, you know, Polynesian Rapa Nui, but I guess that remains to be seen. They were here for 5 days, like many of the other visitors after them. They didn't stay very long. They observed an island that was barren of trees, but was full of huge statues standing all over the island. They were here for about half an hour before they shot dead 12 Rapa Nui because of some kind of conflict that they had with somebody probably trying to steal somebody's hat or something. So that was, you know, welcome to the Western world. So they were here, they left, and it was almost 50 years before another European group arrived, and that was the Spanish. The Spanish were fairly peaceful with the Rapa Nui. They arrived, they talked about seeing a lot of standing statues on the island. They actually talk about witnessing a ceremony in front of the platforms with the statues. But what's really significant about this group is that they decided they wanted to annex the island for for Spain. They went through a very elaborate annexation ceremony, which included putting some Christian crosses up on top of some volcanoes. But what they also did was they presented an annexation agreement to 3 Rapa Nui chiefs, or, you know, some folks that had big headdresses that they thought were chiefs. And these chiefs actually put some symbols on this document. And then the Spanish went away and said, okay, we've annexed the island, it's called San Carlos, but then they never came back, so we weren't really a part of Spain. But what's significant about this is that many years later, in the mid-1800s, when the missionaries arrived, they found that the islanders had wooden tablets that had a kind of pictographed script carved into them. It's the only island actually in the Pacific that made any attempts at a written language. And many of the linguists who have studied these tablets, which are called the Kohau Rongorongo, believe that it was this first introduction by the Spanish to the Rapa Nui of a written document that provoked the creation of the Rongorongo. We don't really know. It remains to be seen. A lot of people, you know, anthropologists and other linguists think that from 1770 to the 1860s, when the missionaries actually saw examples of this, that was too short of a period of time to be able to develop this. Yeah, but that was the significant thing about the Spanish visit. Then we have, of course, a visit by Captain Cook in 1774. He was here for a very short period of time, but what's significant about his observations is that he is the first European to actually make comments about seeing fallen statues. Yeah. So we know that eventually every single statue, and we're talking about hundreds of statues that were installed on platforms to be used in ancestor worship, were eventually knocked over by the islanders. But why and exactly when, we don't know. We do know that the first observation of seeing toppled statues was made by Captain Cook's expedition. Yeah. So he says there's standing statues, but there's also fallen statues, and the atmosphere of the island seems very kind of turbulent. You know, there's certain people hiding in caves, other people that seem very dominant, la la la. So this seems to be the beginning of the end of the cult that is connected to the ancestor worship. And then, of course, you know, we've got the Dutch, we've got the Spanish, we've got the Brits, and we need the French. And the French eventually show up. In 1786, La Perouse comes to the island. He doesn't stay very long. What's significant about his visit is that he tries to introduce domestic mammals to the island, of which there were none except for chickens. He leaves 2 pigs and 2 sheep and some goats, hoping that the islanders will actually raise them so that they can have, you know, an additional protein source, I suppose, but also have something to offer to visitors besides sweet potatoes, chickens, and whatever else. So they leave, and they leave these animals. The Rapa Nui actually paint on caves pictures of European ships with pigs next to them, and then proceed to have a huge party and eat them all up. So then we've got no more domestic mammals. They didn't save them. Yeah, so our timeline goes on here, and actually on this one specifically, the last significant line is at the very end. I don't know if you can see it. I can't see it because our faces are on top of it, but it is in 1838. It is the arrival of the French ship La Flore, and the expeditioners from this ship claimed to see only 1 statue standing on a platform. So that gives us from 1774, when Cook starts to see toppled statues, to 1786. And during this period of time, at least hundreds of statues are knocked off platforms. So it's not only that statues are being knocked off platforms, but the ideology of the island is changing. So that's significant, yeah. Okay, we'll go on to the next. And so here we start to talk about more recent history that includes the arrival of the Christian Catholic missionaries. The first to arrive was in 1864, came by himself, hung out for about 9 months, and then was rescued by the mission. Came back to the island in 1868, and that's when islanders were actually converted to Christianity. But prior to this 1864 arrival of the Christian missionaries, there's a very significant event that takes place in 1862, 1863, and that is the arrival of Peruvian slave ships. So there were ships that left Peru, Callao, in search of laborers because slavery had been outlawed in Peru. Slavery that had been focused on the kidnapping and enslaving of Amazonian Indians. And so when that labor source was cut off, they were looking for other people, and they thought, oh, there's a bunch of folks out here, really nice folks on these islands very close, and wouldn't they just love to come and work with us? And so supposedly the idea was that they were going to come and offer, you know, this new life to these people. And then when they realized that that wasn't going to happen, they started kidnapping people. And Easter Island was affected, as well as many of the islands in Eastern Polynesia. And in the case of Easter Island, of the approximately 3,000, this is what the actual slave raiders estimate, the population of 3,000, they kidnapped 1,400 people. So in a period of about 9 months, half of the population of the island, which consisted of strong young men who happened to be chiefs and priests and the holders of our traditions, they were all taken away from the island. Yeah. And luckily, within a fairly short period of time, about a year, the authorities in Peru got the slave raids stopped, and they were able to require that any of the ships that still had Polynesians in their possession, that they be returned to their islands. Of course, I'm sure that these people didn't know where the people that they had in their possession came from, because they took them from various islands. But in any case, as far as Rapa Nui is concerned, they returned 14 islanders to Rapa Nui, and most of them were diseased and dying. So when they arrived here, they introduced epidemics that just wiped out many more people. So that by the time the missionaries arrived, just 2 years later, we find a group of people that are just sick and dying. And it's not even about like sacrificing your old traditions and religion for a new one. It's just looking for a way to survive. So the conversion of the Rapa Nui people that were the survivors of this period of time was fairly easy, and it happened fairly quickly. Yeah. So we have this period of missionary contact. The Catholic missionaries were reporting to a bishop in Tahiti. So there was also kind of some movement between Tahiti and Rapa Nui as far as kind of agricultural products coming back and forth. And then eventually, the French presence that was represented by the church decides to leave the island, and they consider themselves as owners of the island because the church has supposedly bought land from the islanders. They decide to sell the island to Chile. So in 1888, the French, mostly the church, the Catholic Church, sells the island to the Chilean Navy, and we become a part of Chile. That's why we speak Spanish here. So, and then we'll talk about the park. Yeah, so today, of course, our main industry is tourism, and it's an archaeological, cultural tourism. The Chilean National Park was actually created here on Easter Island in 1935, so it's fairly early. It was actually even still during a period of time when most of the island was being used to raise sheep for the exportation of wool. So none of the sites had been restored yet, but it still was being recognized as a national park. In 1995, there were specific sites on the island. The quarry, for example, where the statues were carved, that were recognized as UNESCO World Heritage. So that's fairly late, 1995. And then in 2017, the Chilean government decided to take the administration of the park from the Chilean National Park, which is called CONAF, and hand it over to the indigenous community of Rapa Nui, which is very significant. Yeah. So now we, as an indigenous community, the Rapa Nui only, I mean, not the Chileans that live here, but the people of Rapa Nui descent, we are the administrators of our own patrimony. And so everything as far as any kind of park income stays here on the island, and we make decisions about how that money is used. No? So from here, and I don't know how long I have left. Mark,
a couple of minutes.
Okay, good. All right. So we'll just take quick shots of some of the main restored principal visitation sites on the island. So this is the beach of Anaquena, which is the only sandy beach on the island. And it is the site, the legendary site of the arrival of the first Polynesians. So when the first Polynesian canoes showed up, this is supposedly where they landed. The first leader, our first Ariki Mau, or king, claimed this area as the center of the royal clan territory. And we do have a restored platform site here. This site was restored in 1978, and it is called Ahu Nau Nau. Yeah, get some drone action going there. And this is the Ahu Tongariki. This is the largest platform on the island. There are actually 15 statues here. The tallest statue is about 8.7 meters high. Yeah. So this big statue here, 8.7, is just slightly smaller than the largest ever installed on the platform here. The largest ever installed is about 9.6. So beautiful site. Is built on the most eastern coast of the island, and it is oriented to the summer solstice sunrise. So on December 21st, where you see the sunrise here over on the left, it rises right in the middle of the platform. And this is very common to many of our platform sites, that they have some kind of astronomical orientation. So this is one of the highlights. You don't get to see that until the last day, because then the rest of the stuff doesn't really look as impressive. Okay, I'm trying to move my slide along. It's getting stuck. Maybe because I'm out of time.
Maybe just press the enter button on your keyboard. That sometimes works.
No, I've got the Apple little disc going
Oh, okay.
around and round and round in circles. Yeah. So there are about, of the hundreds of statues that once stood on platforms today, there are only 42 that are standing again, and they're all as the result of archaeological restoration. So of the 42, we've seen 15 here. There were 7 on the platform at Anakena, and then there are a handful of other restored platforms around the island. But let me see if I can get out of this somehow. I don't want to completely reset my computer. Can you see the disk going?
No, we see your cursor moving, but that's it.
Oh, here we, oh no, hold on. This meeting is being recorded, okay. Yeah, when I go down to my cursor starts to go in circles.
Well, Josie, perhaps I could jump in now and talk about the trip.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I mean, this is the part of your presentation. You see a lot of beautiful pictures, but you've given us a good idea of the history and you know, the dramatic history of the island and the islanders. So thank you very much. And Kathy, is everything okay, Josie? Do you think you can get in now?
No, it's still
All right.
stuck
All
for
right,
whatever reason.
Can you stop sharing in that case?
You would hope so, huh?
Yeah.
Let's see. Stop share.
There you go.
There we go.
So Kathy, do you mind if I jump in now?
Yes, go right ahead, Mark.
I'll jump in with my presentation on the trip itself. So right now, my presentation is not as fascinating in terms of history and whatnot. It's more the nuts and bolts of the trip we've organized next year. We've organized this trip next year based on what we learned on the trip we did just this past February. My wife Heather and I went to Easter Island as part of the first trip run under the new management of Galapagos Travel and CNH Tours. We learned a lot. We had a wonderful time, and we think we've made great improvements on what we offered in February. So here we go. The core trip we're running is from the 2nd to the 10th of February. It consists of 2 nights, 2 days in Santiago, and 5 nights, 6 days in Easter Island, with a final night and day in Santiago, where you can't go to Chile, Santiago, without doing a bit of a wine tour. So that's part of it there. The price is there. You see right there on your screen. That covers just about everything. Flights to Easter Island, which is a 5-hour flight. It's not next door. And most of your meals, hotels, guiding, and a tour leader. We have a great tour leader, Josie. This year, instead of tacking on as integral part of the trip, other parts of the country, we thought we'd offer them as options. So it's not necessary to do these things, but we're giving you an option, a pre-trip option to the Atacama Desert, way up north, San Pedro de Atacama. And also, after the trip, after the core trip, you get the option of going to Patagonia, to Torres del Paine National Park, an iconic park. On day 1, what we do is we arrive, flights usually arrive fairly early in the morning, mid-morning, and so you can check into your hotel not too late in the day. It's a long flight, usually overnight, and Heather herself chose this hotel. She was very keen on it in the modern part of the city. So that day is mostly R&R, though we do have that evening a private cocktail reception and dinner at the hotel. So that'll be very nice. We all get to meet each other. The neighborhood in which the hotel is located is a modern one with beautiful streets and lots of interesting things to check out. So it's very comfortable and attractive place to wander around in on your free time. On day 2, we're going to be exploring a bit of the history of the country, of Santiago, with a visit at the iconic Santa Lucia Hill, where the city was founded. And there we do a walking tour of the main parts of the historical part of the city, some of the major institutional areas. In the afternoon is going to be a bit of a highlight. This is not something we did this year, but some of our guests on their free time went to the Museum of Pre-Columbian Art, and they said it was fantastic. And we regret not having included that in our trip last year. So we're including it this year. Not only are we including a visit to the museum, we're also having the extreme privilege of the actual museum's chief curator himself taking us on a 1-hour visit to the museum. He's bilingual. It's going to be a very nice visit. And finally, we finished that day with the cocktails and dinner at the museum. So I think it's a very privileged opportunity to be doing this kind of thing. Day 3 is the flight to Easter Island. We got a bit early. We head off to the airport. It's, as I said, the 5-hour flight. And we land, we check in our hotel, and Josie will have been with us, of course, in Santiago. But once we arrive in Hangaroa, the only town on Easter Island, she'll take us on a bit of a familiarization walk through the town. It's quite small and compact, very close to the hotel. And we end up with quite an elaborate sunset cocktail by the shore. I remember that just a few months ago. Hangaroa is a small island, as Josie noted. It's basically no more than 14 miles or 23 kilometers long. The main town, Hangaroa, is on the western shores. And here's a zoom of that town. And I put a little red dot to show you where our hotel is, so that you get the impression that it's not that far. From the hotel, you can walk to basically anything you need to see and visit. The main harbor, all the shops, the restaurants. It's all very, very nice. In fact, there are 5 days there. I'll continue with this. Our hotel there is not ultimate luxury, but it's very comfortable, has a nice pool, and it's right by the sea. So as you're having lunch or breakfast there, you'll be overlooking the sea. Very nice, very close to the main attractions in town. So the rest, you'll be spending 5 nights on Easter Island, and this is much longer than your typical organized package tour takes to go visit the island. Typically, when we were in the hotel last February, we saw people come and go all the time. People were checking in, they were there for 2 days, they're checking out. You could, on a very long day, see most of those sites, maybe 2 days, see most of the sites there is to see. You'd have to start early and go to every single site nonstop. But the way we approach this trip is to mix a bit of a laid-back tropical island holiday with some fascinating archaeological tourism, with a great guide. So a lot of your days are half days. So you'll be back in town either for lunch, or you'll head out after lunch to see some sites, leaving you half days throughout your time there to relax, to wander around town, look at people, the local people, how they go about making a living, checking out the waterfront. And it was very pleasant. A very pleasant way to spend our time. And we also timed the trip. We could visit Easter Island any time of year, right? The archaeological park is there. You're not talking about wildlife that's better to see in 1 month or another. You're talking about just the archaeological park. But in the first 2 weeks of February every year is a Tapati festival, where the locals celebrate their Polynesian heritage. And Josie, I don't know if I told you, but I couldn't believe the amplitude of the show they put on. It seemed like half the population of the island was on stage, was involved in the preparation of this festival. I was quite overblown. I don't think we could put something like that together in the entire city of Ottawa. So congratulations to you and your fellow Easter Islanders on the show that you put on. There are literally song competitions that go on for hours, dance performances. We have the outrigger races, and Josie is a competitor in the outrigger races. We went and cheered her on. I saw children involved in a lemongrass toss, which was quite interesting. And another one was a rock rolling competition. So there's all kinds of these things going on while you're there. So if you have a bit of free time, you wander about town and enjoy the show. It made for a very pleasant visit. As Josie noted, the only beach in town. It's quite deserted here, but when we were there were quite a few people. This is where the outrigger canoe races were taking place. It was quite a festive spirit. On the day, I can't see on my screen because I've got some things that are hiding things. What day is this? This is day 8. Sorry, day 8. We have the entire morning to ourselves again to check things out. But in early afternoon, we take our flight back to the continent. And with the time zone changes, that means you arrive, it's pretty late at night. So you basically arrive and go to bed in your hotel. But the next morning, we take you out to visit some of the wineries in town. The first, just outside of town, maybe an hour's drive out. This is the same one we visited last year. This is a couple from Brazil who started up their own little vineyard. They do a great job. We visit them, a nice small scale mom and pop vineyard, but high technical knowledge. And then we will have lunch at a larger corporate vineyard with huge investments in infrastructure at the Metetic, and that's where we have lunch. So we have two different kinds of vineyards that we see. We taste the wine, and I have to say the wines were very good. And then our trip ends with a transfer to the airport. So flights out consistently leave later in the evening, so there's plenty of time to make it to the airport and catch your flight home. As I said, there are options. So I'll just quickly go over the two options. The Atacama Desert. This is from the 29th of January to the 2nd of February. You've probably heard about it. It's one of the driest places on Earth. Salt flats, geysers, lunar valleys, lagoons. It's all very surreal. The landscapes are literally out of this world. Very famous also for the clear skies because it's so dry and a higher altitude. So you have very clear skies. If you're a stargazer, it doesn't get better than this while you're on planet Earth. And finally, cultural sites as well are rich, not only ancient cultural sites, but also living heritage of the native communities. So you're staying in a small town. This is the price with the extension, by the way, right there. Includes the flights from Santiago. You're staying in a small town. It's very quaint, easy to walk around and explore on your free time. And this is the hotel we're using, just to give you an idea. You'll be comfortable. It's called the Hotel Deseptica. I don't know where they got that name from. And then the Patagonia option, it's after our visit to Easter Island, and that's the 10th to the 14th of February. It takes you to Torres del Paine National Park. I've been there. I know the Chileans have always talked about turning this into a World Heritage Site. They haven't done it yet, but it would certainly, I think, get on the list without a problem. So here you're looking at dramatic peaks, glaciers, lakes, the park, and also our hotel is right in town. It's an interesting town. It's a frontier town. You're in a way, you're south here where expeditions leave from here. There's lots of young people getting ready to go on hikes and whatnot. So there's a good vibe in the town there. And this is the price for that extension. That's the hotel we'd be using in Puerto Natales in the south. So that basically is our presentation, unless Josie, you're able to get back onto your slideshow. Okay, Josie just informed us that she's ready to continue with her picture. So I'm going to stop the share here and send it back to Josie. It's all yours, Josie. We're well coordinated. Thank you, Heather. Are you there, Josie? We're not hearing from Josie. Well, listen, until Josie kicks in, perhaps Kathy, you can start moderating the questions, seeing what kind of questions people had, and perhaps questions that we don't rely on Josie for answers because we don't seem to see her right now.
Yeah. So unfortunately, the first question from Ellen, really good question, but I was going to put that off to Josie. But the question is, what is the significance of the figures set on the platforms, and why would they be knocked down?
Is Josie there? Because I could venture a semi-answer because I've heard her speak about this before.
I think you might have to, because I'm not seeing
the significance. It's from what I understand, it's ancestor worship. In fact, similar types of ancestor worship were seen also in Polynesia, although the statues in Polynesia were not made of huge stones. So this is a cultural practice that came over from Polynesia, and it just continued, and it expanded to turning into very large sculptures. So that is it's just basically their religion or their way of their world vision. It's an expression, a manifestation of the world vision. Why were they knocked down? Nobody knows for sure, from what I understand. The general idea is that there was a societal strife. There were conflicts, and things changed. Their old world vision didn't hold anymore. And one of the manifestations of that change in societal vision was a knocking down of these Moais, is what you call them, the sculptures. So that's as far as I can go. We'll have to let Josie come back and give us some more depth to such questions. Kathy?
Yeah, great. A couple other questions. One from Heather here about any scuba diving off of the island.
You can organize, because there is a lot of free time. As I said, most days you have half a day off. There's only one of your 4 full days in the islands where you're fully occupied. And there are a lot of outfitters there. If you want to go scuba diving, you go talk to them on day 1 and see what you can arrange. You can go horseback riding in the highlands, go out fishing. There's all kinds of different activities you can engage in if you so desire.
Hey, yeah, that's really great. And with that, Mark, I would assume there's some maybe snorkeling too with scuba diving.
Yes, of course,
or-
of course. Yeah. As you can see, it's not an easy island to get in and out of the water. There's only one beach on the entire island, so but they have their methods.
Okay. And what is the currency that's used?
It's the Chilean peso, although you can use dollars pretty liberally there. Yeah,
Okay. And that was a question.
and
from-
credit cards are readily accepted as well.
Okay. Oh, how much of Rapa Nui is a national park?
It's, I think, how much is national park? I'm not sure. Most of it, I would say at least most of it. The town, I presume, is not part of the national park, but all the rest is must be national park. I think Josie might be back. There's Josie.
I'm back.
Hi, Josie.
I hope I
So-
didn't miss anything I didn't know about already.
Well, I answered questions on your behalf, so you'll have to see in the recording how well I did. So,
Sorry
Kathy,
about
over to you. Over to you, Kathy.
Okay, so yeah, it's 5:21 my time here. So we were just going through some questions, Josie. So Carl has a question here. Outside of the organized tours, how much can you get out of this trip without a vehicle?
Well, it depends on how much of a hiker you are, I guess. There are a lot of hiking opportunities, and from Hangaroa, there are a handful of places that restored sites that are like within 15 to 20 minutes walking. If you like to bike, for example, if you're a biker, it takes all of about, I'll give it about an hour to bike from Hangaroa to Anakena, kind of at a normal pace. There's a lot of up and down hills. I mean, I mean, I don't know that people would spend their whole trip here without a vehicle or without an organized kind of transport. But if any place in the world would be a place that you could actually enjoy without a vehicle, it would be Rapa Nui, I think.
Okay, great. So yeah, so with this trip that CNH Tours is planning, they've got sort of lots of half days, so people could spend time maybe going on a bike ride or taking some other.
Yeah, I mean, normally with this program, we do the half-day tours for a lot of reasons, just because trying to see Rapa Nui in a lot of full days is kind of not only physically exhausting, but it's so much information. It's a lot of stuff to soak in. So it's nice to have a break from the group, from kind of this organized kind of tour leader talking. But also, of course, it's because in all of these half days will be scheduled around the opportunity to see some of the festival events. So unfortunately, the program for the festival doesn't come out until very late. So at the last minute, I'm like, okay, we're going to do this day, we're going to do this that day. But it's not like there will be time where that you're just kind of idly sitting around. In fact, in some cases, if you want to do extra stuff, we really have to plan ahead and look for when there is some space between other possibilities of interest, to get that in. People that like to go horseback riding, people that want to go out on boats, hiking, that kind of thing.
I'll just jump in to say that I forgot what I was going to say, but the festival itself is certainly a highlight of the trip. And so, of course, hiking and whatnot, but the evenings are full on. Oh yeah, I wanted to say that we planned this trip so that it overlaps with the weekend, because the festivals are going on for, what is it, a 2-week festival, I believe, right, Josie? It's quite long. But on the weekend, of course, the whole frenzy grows tremendously. So that's why we plan the trip to happen over the weekend while the festival is on. That way you'll be out enjoying yourself during the day, visiting sites. But at night, there'll be all kinds of things happening. Even on the weekends, you'll be able to see that those different competitions.
Well, and the thing about Rapa Nui also, and the village of Hangaroa, is that it's very active in the evening. And I'm not talking about just like partying, discos, that kind of thing. As the sun goes down, because of just the heat of the day, families and the community come out and do things. So even when the festival is not going on, if you're here visiting, if you go out after tours in the later afternoon as the sun is coming down, people are going to sites for sunset. Kids are out playing, soccer. There are people on the water, surfing and things like that. It's very, very dynamic, activities going on. The village experience is really something that's worthwhile, and it's safe. And it's just like a lot of people doing a lot of stuff. I don't know, because in other places in Polynesia, it's kind of not like that. And I don't know if it has to do with the South American influence on Rapa Nui, because, those Spanish people like to stay up all night long. But it also has to do with a little bit, I think, about the way that our daylight hours are manipulated, because the Chilean mainland, which is, 3,700 kilometers away, don't want our time clocks to be so different. So what ends up happening is that the sun for us on the time clock rises very late and doesn't set until very late. So because of that, the people are just used to being out and about until later in the evening. So at any rate, that's just kind of the way that we are.
Let's try to remember that. It wouldn't get light until 8 o'clock in the morning, I think. And but the sun went down at 9:30
Well, if you
or
want
10,
to go
right?
to sunrise, you don't have to kind of, be
That's right.
4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at my friend Tony Rusumano, and he knows all this. So one of our guests here has been to the Tapati 4 times, Tony? Yeah. So he's going, that's it.
Planning on staying up late.
Staying up late. That's so when people come, I usually say, okay, it's a good thing to just throw away your clock and let your body run on the time of the light in the sky. Because if not, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, it's 8 o'clock. I need to go eat and go to bed. And the sun is almost straight up above you. So any rate. Any more questions?
So there's no more questions in the chat, but we'll just give people maybe a few more minutes if they wanted to put one in the chat there.
Or just speak up. Just speak up if you like. Yeah.
Yep. Just.
Kathy, I wanted to say.
Sheila has a question.
Oh, go ahead.
I don't really have a question. I have a comment to Josie. Josie, can I see you? There you are.
I'm here.
Josie, I'm not sure if you remember me. I came in 2006.
Oh my gosh, I remember you, and you stayed with us, Sheila.
That's correct.
And we painted. We did.
That's right. We did the fabric pounding, and I showed you that there was a little wee fabric store, a hole in the wall, and I was just so grateful to all the time I spent there. I also, by the way, Mark, I also recommend the Atacama, because that's really well worth going to if you go to Rapa Nui. But it was just such a wonderful, wonderful trip. And I still think about you folks. The other thing I did, you remember, you gave me a calendar to mail to your brother when I got back to the US.
I don't remember that part, but I remember, and I have pictures of us pounding flowers into fabric. And you gave my mother-in-law, or I don't know if it was me, like a lei, like a furry green like lei, and we have that still.
Yeah, I gave one to each of you, I think. Yes.
Oh my gosh, I have old friends here. It's so exciting.
Do you
Yeah,
still
we used to
have a
run
Rapa Nui?
an Airbnb. And Sheila and Tony stayed with us there, so it's like old family.
Lovely,
Oh,
lovely. That's very nice. Great that you guys can connect again.
Mm.
We'll have to go back, Sheila, next February.
You're right. You're right.
Oh my gosh, it would be wonderful.
Yes.
You too, Tony Russomano. I missed you when we got there in 23.
Yes, I know. I understand why. You had a lot of friends to visit.
It was
Mark
crazy.
and Mark, for one thing, at
Yeah.
Galapagos.
Yeah, I didn't see them either, but anyway.
Oh, that's too bad.
So I hope that everyone got something out of this talk, and I really apologize for the technical difficulties. I mean, actually, to a certain degree, it's better to see this stuff in live and up front. The pictures really are beautiful, but being here on the island is a completely different experience. So,
Kathy, do you have any other
Yeah,
moderator comments to make?
Yeah, there's just a couple more questions popped up. One was any formal attire required? So what is the, dress code for on the island? And then
there's
of
no
course,
dress code. I would say comfortable walking shoes. There's not any kind of tremendous hiking. You don't need hiking boots. What you need is shoes that are comfortable, preferably closed-toed shoes, just because there's a lot of little rocks. You want good tread. The summertime, it's hot. So we do a lot of layering. It also, weather is changing a lot and there can be rain, right, Mark? There can be a little bit of rain. But it's warm rain. So, yeah, but there's no, I mean, even for people who sometimes they like to go to the mass because there's Polynesian singing going on, even there's no dress code,
Tell them
Being
about,
dressed is acceptable.
tell them about the dress code for the parade, Josie.
Oh, well, I mean, that of course, you get more points the less you are dressed, actually. We have the last event of the festival is a parade that goes down the main street, and the idea is that each of the girls who are running to be the queen of the festival, they try to get a lot of people to follow them in their parade, and they get points for that. And so they have these places where they will make people costumes, they'll paint you up, because the only way that you can be counted and they can get points for you is you have to look like a Rapa Nui. So the more that you're dressed up as a Rapa Nui, which usually includes taking off more clothes, the more points you get for the girls. And then you can get body paint, they put a lot of feathers, and yeah. So you don't have to take off all your clothes, but if you take off a little, you get more points for that, which usually is the case in most situations.
Oh, it is hot. It is hot. I just wanted to say, some people are asking about further information on this or that. Tomorrow, I'll be sending, maybe tomorrow or the next day, a summary of this talk and links to all the information on our website. So rest assured you'll get all the information. Kathy.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, can I just jump in again, Kathy? I like to tell people, I said this will be an hour long and it's been an hour and 3 minutes now. So if you want to leave, and nobody's going to hurt, feelings are going to be hurt. So just feel free to say goodbye. Otherwise, we can linger on as long as there are questions. Go ahead, Kathy.
No, I was just going to say, I think someone had a question about more details about the Patagonia edition. But I think if you send that out in the follow-up email, that'd be great. And there's contact information there too. And Ellen says she loved the history. And of course, more pictures. But yeah, I agree. Let's all go and then we can see it for ourselves.
Can I write really quick in a couple seconds? Can I try and share my screen of Ranuraraku?
Yes, by all means, of course, everyone's free to leave.
Let me just
commitments.
Give me 1 second here.
Sure.
And let me get to that slide. And if I can share it, because this is really a very cool. Okay, so okay. So what I have to do, okay, So I will share my screen. And we'll go to that screen. Share. Okay. And play from current slide. Okay. So this is the highlight spot. And this is a zoom of the volcano where the statues were carved. So you got statues that are almost finished that are standing on the slopes, but then you also have unfinished work all up here in the quarry. This is one of the most amazing places of the island.
I agree. Very moving.
And
Very...
we got to see it in a very particular situation with the last group. So there you go. That's all I wanted to show you. Thank you.
All right, that was beautiful. Thank you, Josie. Mark, did you have anything else to add?
I know, as I said, I'll be sending information to all those who registered. We had just over 60 people register, and about 30 showed up. And as I was saying at the beginning, usually that's the rule of thumb, you know. So that was great. Thank you all for coming out.
Okay.
Kathy, thank you for hosting this and moderating. Yes, goodbye, everyone. You'll be hearing from me
Josie,
the next day or two.
One more thing, Josie. I forgot to ask you, how's the family?
Oh, everyone's
stop the
good. My
recording.
mother-in-law, Maria Reina, just had her 85th birthday on
Wow.
Sunday. And she's doing really well. Alejandra, you remember my sister-in-law, Alejandra? She's actually,
Yes.
we just got back from a family reunion in Hawaii, and she and her husband stayed there. So they're in Kauai right now, I guess. And
Okay.
well, and I have a little girl now who's 10 years old. It's been a while.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. Well,
But
please give them all my regards.
I will,
because
most definitely.
They
So good
treated
to
me
see
so
you.
well. Good, good.
So good to see you. You too, Tony. Let's email. Let's be in touch. Thanks, everyone. Hope
All
to
right,
see
everybody.
you.
Bye, everybody. Stay well.
Bye-bye.
You know how to reach us. I'll be signing off now. Take care and enjoy the rest of your day. But however many hours you have left remaining.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.